So I finally got to meet my friends from Erica Synths at KnobCon this year, and they asked me to do a demo of their new reverb module. I absolutely love spring reverbs, and I couldn't wait to get my hands on this one. The module comes in a box with the included slim spring tank, some mounting screws and spacers, and the power cable. My daughters and I tried squeezing the tank into my performance box, but I ended up having to just remove all the modules and rethink the case. For such a skinny case, I had to make sure the modules that went over the springs were single PCB ones and didn't bleed any noise into the tank. The included tank is a well-built and low-profile Belton, and the module itself is housed behind a classy black panel with a nice big knob for the feedback. Hi, I'm Quincas and I'm a synth DIY guy. Welcome to the demo video for the Black Spring Reverb by Erica Synths. This is a super cool spring reverb module with a bunch of extra features you haven't seen before. For example, the fact that you have an internal tank and you can connect an external tank right here. And I have the tank that came with my Befaco spring reverb right here as tank number 2. Flip it here and there you have it. And you can also use them both together with the switch in the middle position. Another thing that this thing has is an actual DSP chip inside. So this is a hybrid module. It's obviously analog, electromechanical, spring, but also DSP running in the feedback chain. And you have this switcher here that selects between 7 different effects and off. Here you have one effect parameter per effect. Both the effect parameter and the feedback amount are CV controllable as well. And of course you have the feedback send and return, so you can patch in external modules into the feedback path of your Black Spring Reverb. So without further ado, let's start listening to some sounds. I'm going to start really simple, just hearing the different reverbs without any feedback at all. So I made this funky little sequence here. Let's hear it dry. Now let's hear it with a little bit of the internal reverb. Very crystalline, lots of resonating frequencies there. It's a very rich reverb tank. Now let's listen to my auxiliary one, tank B. Cool, so that one to me sounds a little heavier on the lower frequencies and it's a little more boinky, a little more springy. Now both of them together. I find that I usually need to bring the wet a little bit higher on this setting. That's a very interesting sound. It's different than a single spring tank. To me, it sounds a little bit even like a plate reverb. So let's go back to the internal tank. That's what it sounds like when you bang it. Here's my external tank. And you can bang them both. And this thing has a Vactro-based compressor circuit inside. And I can really hear how it makes the reverb tails sustain a little bit more. So let's play around now with the sequence and the different reverbs and start bringing in some feedback without effects at first. Internal tank. Really brings a sequence like this to life, like compared to the dry. Now let's move to the external tank. together again. All right, internal tank again, and just start bringing in some feedback. Let's keep that feedback high and move to the external tank. So right there is a cool performance technique. You can alternate between the tanks with feedback high and both together. Internal tank again. Let's go full wet. And now let's go from off backwards through the feedback effects. Well, number 7 is called Springhausen. Why don't we take off that input? And at this point, we're just playing with the feedback effects and using the black spring reverb as an instrument on its own. So as I turn the parameter, you get different frequencies and rhythms out of this Springhausen effect. It's the intensity parameter. Pretty cool, scary atmosphere for a scary movie. Now let's move backwards to the haunted shifter, number 6. Yep, another scary effect. It sounds like a ghost. Like howling souls trapped in hell. And as you turn the parameter, which is the pitch shift, changes the texture significantly. You turn the feedback louder. Gotta be careful because you can get it to distort if you're not careful. And there is a trim pot accessible externally to trim the send volume to your external tank, so you can match it to the internal tank. There's also a trim pot for the internal tank, but that's only available from the back of the module, and it comes pre-calibrated from the factory. Alright, let's move back to effect number 5, which is the pitch shifter. This one I really like. Kind of a otherworldly sound. Check this out. Minus 12 steps to plus 12 steps. Now this one in particular, it's fun to plug in an LFO, like a slow sine LFO, to the parameter input. Now listen to that feedback just sweep through the pitch shifting. Let's hear how that sounds using the external tank. It's like denser. Let's hear it as it comes back up high. And remember, right now we have nothing in the input of the module. We're using it as an instrument all by itself. By feeding it back through the internal effects. That's the pitch shifter. Let's go into the delay effect. I'm going to remove my LFO here for now. And this is delay number 4. That's another one that's really cool to play around with the parameter knob. You can get it to stop self-oscillating when you move the delay frequency momentarily. And then it comes back. Let's make it more subtle, a little bit less feedback. Let's put that LFO back in there now. Very interesting texture. Now, why don't we send the LFO to the feedback CV? And we bring the knob down. Let's make the LFO a little faster. So now it's like pulsating. Let's put another LFO in the effects parameter. And now as it pulses, you get these glimpses into the feedback delay. Kind of a rhythmic effect now. Still feels like an eerie texture, kind of a sweep. Okay, let's get these two CV sources out, and we'll move to number 3, which is the handsaw effect. Don't exactly know what that means, but let's just listen to it. Interesting, it seems to have some kind of delay and pitch shifting happening. Let's get a little more feedback going in there. And the parameter is called rate, the parameter that you affect with the knob and RCV. Let's hear that with the internal tank now. We've been using the external tank. Oh, see, the internal tank I feel has a lot more high end anyway. So this effect makes that really obvious. Oh, yeah, things can get real crazy with feedback. I'm glad there's that Vactro based compressor in there. Now let's move to effect number 2, which is called the creeper. And this one, the parameter that you alter is called pitch offset. Similarly to the pitch shift effect, you can focus which frequency you want to feed back. Because normally, with a spring reverb like this, you would only feed back at the spring reverb's resonant frequency. At the tank's resonant frequency. But by inserting maybe a bandpass filter or a variable rate delay or a pitch shifting effect, you can change that. So you can do much more creative things with the feedback than you would normally be able to do. So I like the creeper effect. This one's really nice. Also pretty eerie. I think that's the theme here. Eerie sounds for Halloween. And finally, effect number 1 is a ring modulator. And what you change with the rate is the frequency of the internal sine wave oscillator that's doing the 4-quadrant multiplying, ring modulating, AM, however you want to call it. This one also gives you quite a range of tonal variation. All right, why don't we go back to off? Get that feedback out. And feed it through some effect here. So first thing I'm gonna do is put it in my resonate, which is a 4-channel resonator. So let's get the feedback going again and play around with frequencies. This I really like. Why not use this in conjunction with the delay effect, number 4? So it adds another dimension as you alter that delay rate and get those artifacts. Again, that compressor kicking in, helping out, tame things a little bit. Let's open up all 4 frequencies. Ooh, things can get denser, although it does, the echo seems to choose one frequency and sort of resonate it more than others. Let's go back to off here and let's hear what it sounds like to use a wave folder. I'll use the V-Brazil over folder here. Interesting. I hear that spring being shaken up, like a distortion. Cool. And of course right now I'm modulating everything by hand, but you can imagine what kind of madness you can do by sending modulation sources into these parameters. Let's go to the pitch shift here. Whoa, shit just got real noisy. Alright, so that's the over folder. Let's try my Demora delay here. Give it a tempo. And let's go back to no effects and just bring in that. You know what, this time let's bring in my sequence again. Why don't we change it from sequence to random? Make it a little bit less wet. There we have it. We have the feedback going through a delay now, using it to create an ambience. Now I can play around with the feedback on the delay. Do some really interesting things. bit less wet. Just feel that clean sound a little more and that texture underneath. How about if I use a mild distortion, a clipping? That'll just overemphasize the spring zone resonant frequency, but if I bring it down to pitch shift number 5, there we have it. Distorted, pitch shifted feedback. Is going way overboard. Okay, so that was cool. What else? What a phaser. Let's go full wet to really kind of hear that. And we've been using the internal tank for a while now. So the phaser effect's a little bit more subtle. Why not send it an LFO? Animate that center frequency. There it goes. Interesting. Let's make it less wet and hear how that works as more of a background texture. Oh, it's lower. That's kind of cool. And of course I can dose it with the feedback pot right here. I love that Erica always chooses the most performance relevant control, puts it on top of the big knob every time. So things are easy to get at. Let's hear the external tank now. Very cool. Now let's turn off the feedback and interact physically with my external reverb tank. I love doing that. I can do a whole performance just physically playing the spring. Especially like the crunchy sounds you get when you just sort of grab it, squeeze it. Of course, you could do that with the internal tank too if you just remove a module or two, and then you can reach in there and fiddle with the spring itself. I did do a little bit of that yesterday before I had everything on there, and it sounds super sweet. So going back to my sequence here, which is right now kind of a random sequence, let's make it slower and really hear those tanks ring. Right now, no feedback. Why don't we make it a little bit higher pitched? In fact, why don't we turn off the sequencer and just hear what a sine wave sweep sounds like on this thing. So here's the sine wave sweep. Here's the sine wave sweep with the external tank. Here it is with the internal tank again. All right. How about a white noise sweep now? Internal tank, external tank. So yeah, the internal tank definitely lets through more of the high end. Hear that? A lot of it. It gets really filtered on this one. Both together. Again, you get that kind of platey sound. And it's a little bit softer. At least on my unit, the combination internal-external reverb is a little bit softer than the other options. Just fine, I can compensate for that. It sounds interesting. It's definitely different than the single spring tank. Back to internal. And back to our sequence. Bring it down to a more realistic level. Let's add a little bit of feedback with that Demora delay. Oh, why don't we try the meth amp distortion? Yeah, it's just a mess. Noise. Alright, that's it for today's video. I think I've covered everything. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, support the channel. And if you like this module, it has just been released and it's now shipping from the Erica Synths store as well as many other retailers. See you soon and stay noisy.